Welcome to the sales panel. I have the pleasure, my name is Clay Mertes. I work at the Alliance Corporate Office. I'm the Director of Sales. I have the pleasure of interviewing some absolute badass closers today. And that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about picking up checks. We're going to be talking about growing your income. And really, we're going to be talking about kind of like the intangibles of sales. Because so much of this is about body language, tonality, and how to interact with people. Not so much the words that you say, but how you make people feel. So directly to my right, we have VeRae Joseph. In 2024, she lit it up with $200,000 in issue paid production. Next to VeRae is Belle Crause, who in 2024 did $597,000 in personal production. And to her right is Jerry Burbage. In 2024, $255,000 in production. So some absolute badasses. Please take a seat, and we're going to jump right into it. So I'm excited to ask you guys some of these questions because this is some stuff I really wonder as like, you know, how do you do $200,000 in production? And I know we kind of had some conversations before that like so much of in our organization, it's like, wow, if we could teach people to do a really good job of connecting with people, our sales are going to go through the roof. So VeRae, I want to start with you. When you are in a home, what are some of your strategies to connect with a client quickly?
Hi. You got to smile, right? So they're judging us within the first 20 seconds of meeting us. So it's starting by getting out of your car and waving with a smile, and it's all about the handshake. You don't want to be a dainty handshake. They think that you don't know what you're doing. You shake them with confidence, and you smile, and you push your way into that door.
Push your way in.
Push your way into the door.
Tell me more about that. What do you like? How do you push your way in the door without like offending somebody?
So when you're there and you're shaking their hand and you have the smile, you go ahead and do this. Jerry, Veronica, I'm here for our appointment. Nice to meet you. Do you have a table that we can sit down at? All right, let's do it.
Good.
Boss.
Did y'all pick that up? She stepped with her right foot right in.
Gotta use the right foot.
Gotta use it.
I like that. Belle, in the same kind of like vein of questioning, how do you like know you've connected with somebody? Like what's the indication that you guys are tight and you know you've connected?
It's body language, really. It's not what they're saying. Are they relaxed? Are they smiling back? Are they leaning in? Are they telling you something that is kind of like, I literally just met them 5 minutes ago and they're telling me about their first kiss. Right? Like, what are they saying and how are they saying it? So Andy once described it, you know, like, because I was asking, you know, when you do this with a recruit and things like that, and he's like, you got to feel it. Like, how do you know when to kiss a girl? Like, you can't explain it, but when it happens, you know it. But you also know when it ain't happening. You know when it ain't happening. And so watching their body language, and sometimes people are very standoffish. So if they're there leaning back with their arms crossed, you know, at first I mirror them. And then I start to lean in, and I smile, and I'm interested in them. And then you can tell. You can tell they'll put their arms down, or they'll lean further in, or they'll reposition their legs and lean toward the table. It's those little things that you're watching for. And I think that we as women do have an unfair advantage because I think we pick up on intuitively on the presence of the other person around us. And so, you know, lean into your unfair advantage, right? You can tell when you're connecting with someone. You can tell when someone's being creepy. It works the opposite direction. You can tell when someone's being kind. Tune into that, you know. And also, don't make it about you. These appointments are never about us. They're never about us. We feel at first uncomfortable because we're in a new environment doing new things. But this is a person who just let a stranger in their home and is telling them like how they met their spouse and telling them, you know, how they ended up where they are. So, yeah, it's a lot on the body language and what they're talking about.
You started to touch on it, but I'd like you to go into a little bit more. Like sometimes we get those grouchy clients that are like that are lean back and just like, you can tell the body language is off. Mm-hmm. How do you break them up? How do you shake them out of that body language?
So for me, when I go into a home, the first question I ask, and a lot of people, you know, may use this, may not, but I have found this is a gateway question, not a, well, kind of like a gateway drug because it leads to the money. But a gateway question is when I come in and I just kind of look around and say, so how long have you been here? And it doesn't matter how long they've been there. And then I'm going to ask what brought them from here to there. And then they always want to lead you to the couch. And so do you mind if we sit at the table? It'll make it easier for the paperwork. See, I'm already telling them we're doing paperwork. Do you mind if we sit at the table? It's going to make it easier for the paperwork. Then they take you to the table, and they're, standoffish. But if they told you how long they've been there and what brought you here, people only move for 2 reasons, love or money. Now, they mask it as many things. Well, my mom was here. That's love. My work was here. That's money. My husband got a job. That's love, right? So when I know what motivated them enough to move, I'm going to ask on that. And so if he's like, oh, I got a job. Oh, what kind of work you in? Right? That must be difficult. Wow. Tell me more about that, right? And so when they're standoffish like that, and they'll be like, well, can we just get to it? Oh, I apologize. I'm a little nervous today. I don't know why. It's just sometimes it can be hard meeting new people all the time. And I just appreciate you being somebody that opens your door. Because when you're admonishing the behavior they're having, but through someone else. I'm a little nervous today. Sometimes it's scary meeting new people. Well, he just met a new person too. And now he or she feels the responsibility to not be the scary new person. Right? And so it's like you just kind of trick them into that. One of the other things I do, if they're just real standoffish, like, well, just to get into it, I don't want any chit chat. Well, I'm going to open my ATM and I'm going to go right to my license page. And we all know the license page got the pictures on there. So the reason I go to that page is like they want to get down to business. So I'm like, okay, well, I got to keep everything legal. So I got to show you my license. And I open it up and I point and I have a blurb that I say, I am licensed in the state of Washington. We have to update this every 2 years to make sure we're compliant on all the programs here in the state. And oh, look, here's a picture of me and my husband about 30 years ago. I'm just going to flip it just like that, from business back to whatever. A reason I show that picture, my husband and I was wearing uniform. There's a lot of military out there. So I'm looking for something. I'm looking for something to kind of crack that and have them just relax and not be just like, well, just show me the numbers, right? If they have animals, I'm going to point to the picture of me and my pets, right? So I'm going to point to a picture that I think, what's something I can use to crack that facade, to get under that shell. So, but that is a judgment call on which one. But that picture page, you should have a picture of you and your spouse. You should have a picture of you and a hobby. You should have a picture of you and any pets if you have them. And have a picture of you and a loved one who died that was close to you. Because you can connect with anybody on one of those 4 things. And so those pictures are not there to tell them how awesome you are. Those pictures are there to crack that shell so that you can find common ground on any one of those topics.
That was good. I want to point out something you mentioned a couple times as well. A lot of times, like, you'll have clients try and take control of a conversation, and you mentioned it several times. Belle will give them the illusion that they're in control, and then she'll retake back control through her questions and showing them different stuff. So you mentioned that a couple times. Jerry, when you're connecting with a client, what are kind of your strategies of connection questions? I know we talk floor or form a lot. Do you have a series of questions or like classic Jerryisms that you use to like connect with people to get them going?
Jerryisms. So that's loud. If they are closed off like that too, like she was saying, she uses that. I'll try to find something in their house too to get them to. I'm like, what's that? And get them to unlock, to go point at it. And once I have them unlocked, then I can start asking questions, like she was talking about. Hey, where you guys from? How long you been here? And I'll whatever they're answering, I just try to stay on that subject until I can get them to open up completely and start sharing. Once they start sharing stuff about them openly that I haven't even asked yet, then I know we're there and we're getting connected. I don't know that I have like a Jerryism or anything. I do have, like, hey, are we looking? Is this your spouse? How long you guys been here? I think we all have like those same kind of basic stuff that we've learned that work. So just trying to stay in that same set of questions and keeping it simple and trying to get through it till you find the one out of that form. Does everybody know what form means? So it's family, occupation, recreation, and then the message. So, and they'll hit on one of them. Like if you start talking about their family and they're still like this, they probably don't like their family. So We need to move on.
True that.
We need to move on.
How do you handle it, Jerry, when people want to talk about a category that's not really helpful? So, for example, like if you wanted to talk about football with me, I could talk about football all day. How, like, if you got a client that wants to talk about the Cocks, the Gamecocks, how do you avoid talking about Cocks the whole appointment?
Well, that can be tough. But, you just got to get to a point, and it's the little things we've learned in the videos, after you're there. And so we found a common ground, which is what we're trying to do when we first get there. And then you just got to hit them with, something like, hey, I should have put so one of those things you just asked, what I do is I was like, man, I should have made you my last appointment so I could stay all night. But unfortunately I can't. I've got 6 or 7 other people to get to today. So, this is why you have me here. And just move into it.
Move on past it.
Yep.
I like it. VeRae, I want to ask you, so we've built a connection. We got a client. We feel like we're in a good space. How do you transition from, like, we're friends and we're building rapport to more that emotional element and starting to kind of build a why?
Absolutely. So one thing that I am very intentional of is asking questions that are leading the client down the rabbit hole that I need them to go. I'm not talking with the client about their favorite color. If you live in New Mexico, the Cowboys, go Cowboys. Most of the time we can find a connection with that. But my questions are very, very intentional. And so I'm being friendly and building rapport, but they don't even know where I'm headed with that. So just like Jerry and Belle mentioned, we're talking, hey, what brought you here? How long have you guys been here? And being authentic, right? So people are going to be able to smell you if you're being not authentic. If you're going to a trailer home that has cat piss everywhere, don't say, what a beautiful home. How long have you been here? They know they don't live in a beautiful home, right? But find something that you can compliment them on and go down that rabbit hole. Being very intentional of what's around the room. If you see a rocking horse, if you see a high chair, if you see, pictures on the wall, ask about those questions. And me being intentional with my questions, I'm always trying to figure out who do they love and who have they lost. So it's always who do they love and who have they lost. And because that's the rabbit hole I'm going down, being intentional of trying to get them to talk about death in their family so I can transition to business. And quite literally the thing that I do so they know, okay, I'm transferring to business now, is I pull my ATM out of my backpack, I sit it on my lap, and they know, okay, VeRae's here for business. And I put my hand on the lead and I slide it across the table. And we've transitioned from friendliness, going down the rabbit hole that I need, to it's business time.
That's kind of like the Midwestern knee slap. You know about that? When it's time to go.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just being very intentional with your questions. Again, we're there for a purpose because we have a lot of newer agents that'll call us and they're way off in the left field, haven't even talked about death once or who they love, and they're calling like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, dude, you're so off track. Like, you got to get them on track talking who they love and who they've lost. Because once you find out who they love and who they've lost in their family, that transition is very easy because then you can start talking about death. Like, that is what we do for a living. We talk about death and how did that affect them when that happened.
Is that something you do, Belle? Like, do you tell any stories, like, personally to sometimes elicit emotion from them?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we were taught in the Lampy organization was your impact statement. So that About Me page in your ATM, y'all, it ain't about us. It's about breaking the ice and connecting with them. And you don't have to do everything on that page, but we were taught no matter what, you do that impact statement. The reason I do this, and then you tell your story of loss, because that's how people open up and know this is a safe place to talk about those sensitive topics. And so, I will use the story of my father-in-laws. So my husband's biological dad froze to death when he was a young boy, and they lost everything, like on the streets, lost everything, and he had to go into foster care. And fast forward 40 years later, when his stepdad died, because of that original experience with having nothing in place, that led to all kinds of issues. She ended up addicted to drugs. My husband bounced around foster care, things of that nature. And because of that tragedy, she knew she could never be that vulnerable again. So when his stepdad died, there was enough money to pay off the house, pay off the bills, and she could retire early. And we didn't know how great a blessing that would be because she was 63 when that happened. She died when she was 68. We only had 5 years with her, and we didn't even know it. But because they prepared, those 5 years were spent with family and doing the things she loves instead of having to rebuild a life again. Has anything like that ever happened to you, Clay?
That's the question right there. So like you get the story, and then you ask that question. And y'all notice how like well versed Belle is in telling that story. I would tell you, you need to look in front of a mirror and you need to tell your story to yourself. And it needs to be a 2 to 3 minute story, and you ask that question and the appointment's over. Like they're gonna tell you something crazy. You're about to add something, Jerry.
Yeah, I was just saying, and those statements on that, as you stay in this business, you're gonna need to update them because your story is gonna change. It's like, so when I got started in 2019, I hadn't lost really anyone close to me, but then at the end of 2022 and 6 months later into 2023, I lost my mom and my dad within 6 months. So my story changed, and getting in there like she was talking about and telling that story and telling it about how, hey, because my mom had a cancer policy, when she got diagnosed with cancer, instead of us having to put her in a, what are those places, assisted living or anything like that, we were able to use that policy and just let her stay at home so that we could go see her anytime we wanted to. And we used the money out of that policy to pay a nurse there instead of her being in assisted living. So telling that story and then jumping right into a question, they're like, oh, I've never, not one time when I tell that part of it, that they're not like, oh man, I definitely need something like that. Because who wants to go to a nursing home if you don't have to,
And if I can add something, I'm very, very blessed in my life. Both my parents are alive, my aunts and uncles. So a lot of you out there might say, well, I don't have a story like that. And so, for myself, again, very blessed, siblings are here. My story is watching my dad swipe his credit card at the funeral home when his brother died. Now, I was not very close to my uncle. I grew up seeing him, once a year, if that, on the holidays. But that is my story, and just so you guys know, you don't have to have a tragic story in order to sit there and close a deal. So if you're like me and you don't have a tragic story, you just use what you have and you go based off of facts, right? You don't want to make a story up. So you just pick something that's near and dear to your heart. And, I wasn't totally distraught when my uncle passed, but my dad was. So seeing him distraught and then swiping his credit card at the funeral home is my story.
I think you literally ask somebody, if you don't have a story, ask your parents what happened to your parents. Right. And there's a story, and it just happens. Kind of we've been doing this whole time, but will you talk a little bit about your tonality, VeRae, and how it changes and how you use it when you're talking to people?
Yeah, so I love Jeff Bright's Animals. Do you guys know Jeff Bright's Animals? Anybody show of hands? So what Jeff Bright taught me early on in this business is tonality and body language are everything. Because again, they're judging us from the second we walk in. So from the beginning, I'm doing my best otter, which is not hard for me because I'm a lion otter by heart, right? So when I start out as the otter. I'm the go happy girl with the huge smile, getting them to like me. I'm being energetic. I'm asking about their family, how long they've been here. Oh my gosh, what brought you here? Yeah, oh my gosh, you've got 6 grandkids. My mom and my stepdad have you beat. They have 8. Wow, you've got 6 grandsons. I bet you they'd swap you 2. They've got all granddaughters, so we guys might be able to do a little bartering. So I go from the otter to the golden retriever, because then they want to know that we we care about them? Can we connect with them in the golden retriever mentality? Can we sit there? Can we listen? Not too much. If you let them go crazy, you'll be there all 3 hours and write no app. But then next is the golden retriever. We're loving them. We're listening to their stories, asking questions, making them feel heard. Because at the end of the day, that's all these people want, is to feel heard. From there, we're moving into the Beaver. We're moving into facts, why we're here. It's time to do business. This is what we're going to accomplish today. Giving them the facts, the figures, and then from there, you're going into the Lion. You're closing that deal, and you're letting them know that what you're doing is applying today, and we don't even know if you're going to get approved. So I always remember those animals, and every single time I start with the otter, golden, beaver, lion. And sometimes I'm faced with a lion right away, and they don't like that otter. So you have to establish your dominance as a lion too. And you have to let them know that you're confident enough and capable enough to do business with that lion, and then they trust you, and you're back to that circle.
So you kind of use matching if they're especially if they're coming at you hot. You're going to match what they're at, and then you can kind of move into where you want them to be.
Absolutely, yeah. If you've got a lion, he's not looking to do business with a golden retriever. He wants to know that you've got your stuff is together and that you're confident and able to help him. So you establish your dominance right away with that lion, and then you circle back. You don't stay a lion with a lion. That's what you call a pissing contest, right? But you establish your dominance and you move back to that circle. And when you're with the beaver, I just want to get down to facts and figures. You pull them in. We're going to get to facts and figures, and you go right back to that cycle that you need to be in.
That's good. That was really good. Belle, can you talk about your tone when it comes to getting a check and how you kind of like massage that and like make sure that you're establishing that correct tone when getting a check?
So when we get to that phase of the appointment, right? So throughout the appointment, obviously, you're going to be as natural as you can, being in a stranger's home, And it was very hard for me. Military background, like we're stoic, and I had to learn to let that shield down and be in that moment. Sometimes I cry with my clients. We definitely laugh a lot with them. We do the nerd work. That's what we call that. So we got to get to the nerd work now, and I like ease them up on it because some people are afraid of the facts and figures, and there's some that want to get right to it. It's like, oh, we're going to get to the nerd work. I promise you. That's my job here today. But that tonality, as you go through it, when you start asking some of those sensitive questions, social security number, bank accounts, what meds are you taking? Because they will tell you some stuff, right? You've got to receive that information and ask that information as if it's no big deal. Because if you are like afraid to ask for a social security number, they will not give it to you. Right? It's like if I have a firearm and you're acting scared around it, I ain't gonna let you hold it. Right? We both need to know that you can handle what's about to happen. So I'll just go through and just ask those questions. And I have a blurb that I use when we're going through the application. I'm going to ask you a series of questions that are on this application. I'm required by law to read them exactly as written and record your answer. Many of them are going to be similar to the questions we just went through as we were getting the information to see if this was the right thing for you. So if the question sounds silly, I apologize. I just have to ask it because it's here on the screen. And so I just go through and ask them. And they're like, and I don't get why you need that anymore. I used to because I was concerned when I would ask, but I learned how to ask most applications, if you're writing term, will want to know what state they're born in, and I was taught to do this. Ask that question first, even though the social comes for it. So what state were you born in? Oh, I was born in Washington. Okay, so you're a U.S. citizen. What's your social? No big deal. Oh, I was born in Mexico. Okay, no problem. Are you a citizen? What's your tax ID number? It's on there, right? So you just casually ask. When it gets to the banking information, like it's on the screen. It's like, okay, they will not process this without your good faith that you're going to follow through. And the way you present your good faith is we're going to put your banking information on here so that if you're approved, and because they're about to do a lot of work, they're going to spend a lot of money and manpower on processing this. They need to know that you have good faith in them and that they can have good faith in you. You're going to follow through on this. Now, it won't draft until the date you picked, or it'll draft as soon as it's approved, and then it'll be every month on the 15th like you've asked. So what's the name of your bank? And I ask it in a certain order. It's like the frog in the water mentality, from less invasive to more invasive. So what's the name? what's the name of the bank that you want Mutual of Omaha to draft that payment from? I'm not asking for the banking information. Mutual of Omaha is. What's the name of the bank you want Mutual of Omaha to draft that payment from? Okay, do you want Mutual of Omaha to draft that from a checking or a savings? Okay, what's the routing number? If you don't have it, I can look it up real quick, right? Because that's out there, that's public information. The only thing I need them to give me is that account number, right? But that's the last question I ask, right? Because I act like it's just one in a series. Okay, got the route number, and then what's the checking account number? If there's any zeros in the front, I'll need that too, because sometimes, exactly, but you give them instructions. They're just following instructions, but you got to act like it's just instructions and not like it's classified top secret information that you're scared to hold. So.
Yeah, and if you've done the other stuff moving forward to that we were talking about, when you get into that part of it, they're already in the mindset of just whatever you ask them, yes, and that's what the front part is for too. If you're getting them in the mindset to answer, okay, I need this, and one thing I'll do too when I'm asking those is, I'm looking down at my computer, so I'm like, hey, I need, what's your date of birth? What's this? And like she said, we've already asked that when we were going through figuring out what they're going to be, and their medications and all that stuff too. And then one thing about like tone stuff, I don't know if y'all heard it, but when you hear me now, you hear her just a second ago, but when we were both telling our story a minute ago, it sounds totally different than this.
And something Robbie Kraft told me a long time ago, because I was struggling to give somebody some bad news. He's like, how you make them feel is how they will feel. Right. So that's what it boils down to. A tone is how you want them to feel is how they'll feel. Let's switch we talked a little bit about body language, but I want to talk a little bit more about that. VeRae, you talked about kind of your body language coming into the door with like that confidence. What's your positive body language? I guess what's body language you should have at the table when you're dealing with a client?
Awesome. So body language that you should have at the table when you're dealing with a client is open. When you're sitting with a client, you want to be open and trustworthy, right? Again, Belle already touched on the match and mirroring. So if they're sitting there crossing their arms, I'm going to do the same thing, and then I'm going to switch my body language, because then they don't even know that they're doing it, but then they switch their body language because you've copied them and you make an adjustment and now they want to copy you, right? So just being very intentional. I'm open, I'm trustworthy, and I'm confident. You don't want to be sitting in their couch like this, looking down, feet crossed, because now you're not confident and they don't know that you're that person that they can do business with, right? So the body language at the table is very important. Sitting up straight. Again, just letting them know that you're their person and that you're confident in what you're going to do.
Belle, can you teach them the head nod thing?
Yes. So when you start asking questions, if you want a yes answer, you're going to nod your head like this while you ask the question, right? Like, isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Yeah. There's a trick that I learned too when someone is telling you a story about themselves. We're there to be interested, right? If we're interested, they think we're interesting. I'm going to lay down the mic so I can show you this. This is how you lean into someone's story. This is, even though sometimes I panic in my head. Y'all, I'm an introvert, and people start telling stories, and in my head I'm like, oh God, how do we get out of here? How long is this going to go on? I got 4 more people. I don't think I have the capacity for this today, right? Like, because they tell you stuff, and it's all in your head. But on the outside, you prop your hands on the table. Prop your hands on the table. You cross your hands like this. You don't close them up. Cross them like this and just lean in. And then have a slight smile on your face, as long as the story requires a smile, right? If they tell them about the dog died, don't be smiling, right? And just lean in and let them tell their story. And then, wow, I'm so glad you shared that with me. That's why I love what I do. I get to meet so many amazing people right here in my community. Oh my goodness, we've been here how long? I better get back to this or you guys will charge me rent. And I just tap the ATM. That was good, yeah. That ATM is a lifesaver. Whenever you need to get back to work, you just tap it. Just tap it.
What's some negative body language? What should you not do in the home, Jerry?
I'm not going in there and just being like, hey, so what's going on? so, so I wanted to back up for a minute while it's on my mind. Like with her, the handshake and going in, it's something we learned from Brant. Even with that, like I always put it down so that they feel like they're the one getting it. I guess it goes for everybody. Don't wear shoes like this where you have to tie them. You want to slip them off because as you're going in, you say, hey, where do you want me to kick my shoes off at? And if they're like, oh, you don't need to, but at least if you have to, you just slide them off. When they're just not paying attention to you, if you're sitting there and they're just looking around, and, you need to go back to that form, pull back to the system so that you can get them back into, hey, we're here. You wanted me here, because they've already agreed to us a few times. They filled the lead out. They picked up the phone. They said, yes, come over. They told you what time to come over. So they want you there. So we just got to get them back into the why and pulling them back in with questions and get them comfortable.
Do you have any other body language you use at the door? You kind of talked a little bit about this. As a man coming to a door, how do you make a woman feel like you're not a bad person?
So, I wave. Cassie, I remember when I first took her out with me running, she's like, what are you waving at? And I was like, just letting them know I can see them, even if they're not. So, smiling. I try to wear bright colors when I go, because they're not as alarming as dark colors. At least that's what I've been told, so I do it. I don't have a bunch of big backpack and stuff like that. I don't have my hands in my pockets. I knock on the door, ring the doorbell, and then I back away from the door. If they have steps, I come back down the steps. Just anything I can get away from them at first so that they don't feel like any pressure when they first come to the door, especially if it's just a woman.
That's good. That's exactly what I was thinking, hit all of them. Sometimes a lot in sales, I'm sure y'all deal with this as managers, people talk about objections, how do I handle objections? And everything I've learned from incredible closers like y'all is that the best way to handle an objection is not to get it. So I'm gonna ask y'all the same question. What are some strategies you have to avoid objections? What are your setups in the home where you don't get this objection?
So the key to objections is bringing it up before it happens. So, a lot of times a new agent will say, I got an objection, I'm not interested. Oh, I've already got that taken care of, right? Oh, I don't need life insurance, I already have that. So if we can bring that up and be, 2 steps ahead of them at all times, we don't get those objections. So, a good way to do that in the home is in the ATM, what I do on the, the company's page where it shows people we work with, Mutual of Omaha, all of those, I'm talking about it right then and there. I said, yeah, so these are just a few of the companies we work with, and I point, I've got Foresters, Mutual of Omaha, F&G, I've also got Transamerica. Oh, these are the ones my husband has. I go through that. I said, so which one of these companies do you have? And whatever they say, because again, I'm just assuming they already have life insurance. If you ask them, do you have life insurance? Then that brings, you have the opportunity for an objection. But if you just say, which one of these companies do you have? And they say, well, I don't have life insurance. I'm like, oh, okay, no big deal. Most of the families that we sit with, don't have life insurance either. So this is what we're going to do today. When they say they do have life insurance, I said, oh, okay, is it one of these companies or who do you have? If whatever company they say that they have, I'm like, oh, that's great. We actually help families that have that company too. Do me a favor, go ahead and grab that policy. This might not even be something that you need. So I'm bringing that up. I'm just making them feel like I'm there harmlessly, but they're doing what I'm asking them to do.
I like that.
So again, same thing. The easiest fight to win is the one you don't have to have. And so, when you realize that most objections you're getting are not objections, they're data points. And if you gathered the data ahead of time, you would know how to walk them through that. So someone already having insurance, that's a data point. It's not an objection. When we're doing our fact finding, we're going to discover that long before that we get to, how this is going to help your family and things of that nature. And so when you're going through that I want to think about it. There's nothing to think about. There's one of two things happened. It was either price or personality. And when I asked them, one of the things that I've been trained to ask them is, well, are you leaning toward the plan or are you leaning away from it? Because if they're leaning toward it, it's price every time. If they're leaning away from it, I didn't build the why. I got to circle back to what was important to them. Because people don't need more time to make decisions. They don't need more time. They need more information. So there's something in there that I missed that they weren't clear on. There's lack of clarity. So if I can then back it up and bring clarity to the situation, there's nothing left to think about. It's time to pee or get off the pot. So, and sometimes when I don't say that to the client, but they're like, okay, so I'm leaning toward it. Okay, well, let me ask you this. Was that $42 a month a little bit of a stretch? Let's back that down, because here's what's important, Cassie. This is a commitment you're making to your family, but it's coming out of your bank account every month. And we want to make sure that you honor that commitment to your family. So we want this to be comfortable in there. So let's just start with this one, and I'll find a lower quote. Let's just start with this one, make sure everything goes well, and then when we do our review, because I promise you I'm going to take care of you and your family throughout this process, when we do our reviews, when it's time to get a little more, we'll work on that then. How's that sound? Does this sound more manageable? And, oh yeah, I can do that, right? But if they're leaning away from it, it's like, well, let me ask you this. You said that your daughter would be the one responsible if you were to pass away. And you said that she still worked and had kids. But if there's no money here, how's she going to afford to take off work and get the child care in order to take care of your affairs here? Oh, she's got money in the bank. Oh, she's got money in the bank. Is that designed for your final affairs? Or is that college money? Or is that their emergency fund? Because I'd hate for her to have to use the grandkids' college money to handle this, right? You're going to circle back to what they told you was important on there and try to go back into that why. And that's where, in the beginning, if you let them get away with a surface answer to that, you're screwed every time. When they say, oh, I just want to make sure they don't have to worry. Oh, tell me more about that. What part of this has them worried? Why would they worry? Would that cause a problem? Would that be complicated? Have you guys been through this before? How did that feel? All those questions, if they don't want, what are they going to get deeper on that? Find out what exactly is the worry. And then when it comes time at the end to get to that point, you don't get those same objections. And trust us, not everybody buys from us, but it's not because we weren't in there running this the way it was designed to be run. It's just some people can't close them. They don't love their family. This ain't gonna happen. Can't get blood from a turnip.
Jerry, how do you avoid the I want to think about it? How do you avoid I want to think about it? Because that's a common objection. How do you set that up where you don't get that?
So setting the expectation up front. I think that goes with all of them, and it's so funny listening to her say all that just now, because I've never talked to Belle about in home. I never talked to Belle about script, nothing. But we do almost the same thing. Like when we give them those options, and if they don't immediately go, well, let's go to this. Like we do the same thing. So I like to. There's really only like 4 objections you usually get, and I like to just go ahead and give them to them up front and let them know, hey, this is what we're doing today, so that I don't get that thing about it. Hey, so here's why I'm here. I work with these companies. What I'm going to do today, Belle, is we are going to fill out an application and go through this approval process. Belle, keep repeating the name, and just give them the expectation of what we're doing today.
Beautiful, beautiful. Please give it up for these closers. That's the end of our panel. It's time to move.